invite our next panel discussion for the topic of the silent victim of the pandemic. Dun, 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 dun. Soft skills development in children and what happened during this time. So let's shed some light on this very important time. I want you to join me with the director of Bunny Kids Learning Limited, Yukshan Ritu. Come on up to the stage. Thank you for being here, and let's talk about this, shall we? Because I know a lot of kids suffering. Come on up, girl. The stage is yours, and I'll be back.
Thank you.
You got some microphones here. Just so our panelists know, we are live on YouTube, so I ask that everyone take a seat because the cameraman zooms in and gets a close-up on everyone talking. It's a nicer way to engage, so please do grab a seat and enjoy your panel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Mary from Hong Kong. I'm so glad to be here and to be the moderator of this following discussion concerning, can I have the PowerPoint, please, the slide? Thank you. Yes, our topic today, the silent victim of the pandemic, soft skills development in children, okay? So before the discussion, I would like to take some time to let you know more about me and the panelists today. So I have been in the education field for more than 15 years, and I have spent around 7 years of effort on the early childhood education. In my past, okay, I have set up a school, a language school, and I've set up my own English phonics learning system, and that's called Bunny Kids Phonics. And my latest, actually the paper, doctorate paper, it is about the impact of the pandemic on pre-primary students in Hong Kong. And now, let's welcome our panelists. First of all, let's give a big hand to Ritika Aran. Ritika Aran is the founder of Learning Buds. Her mission has been and still is to prepare our future generations by enhancing soft skills in children through academic and non-academic programs worldwide. Ritika is passionate about the advancement of women as educators and is inclined towards training and mentoring educators who would like to be a part of the Learning Buds team. Welcome. Okay. And next we have Richa Bhushan. Richa Bhushan has an extensive background in edtech and content development spanning over 3 decades. She deeply understands the unique needs and challenges learners face in K-12. She has crafted the online courses offered by her company, Content Guru, to equip learners with the key abilities required for success in today's world. And next, we've got Ritu Vashishtha. Ritu is an educationist, motivator, mentor, and senior biology competent faculty. She has worked as a leader in several national and international organizations. Currently, she works with Global Education Center Qatar, an organization connected with NEET, IIT, JEE, preparations, and boards. Ritu has also received Best Biology and Environmental Science Faculty Award in 2022. And last but not least, we've got Tulasi Ilen over here. Welcome. Tulasi Ilen is a childhood education expert, empowerment coach, and the founder of Mindful Tree Education. Tulasi Ilen's mission is to support thriving parents, their children, and educators to unlock their full potential, regain confidence, and build fulfilling parent-children, educators, students relationship by creating a space for discussion. All right, okay, so then, oops, sorry about that. Let me place everything. All right, okay, so before the discussions, I would like to give you a little bit of the information of our topic today, okay? So, today's topic about children, right? Okay, so according to the famous psychologist, probably you know her, like Piaget's theory. Who knows about theory? I think everyone knows about that, right? So our children develop their different kind of skills through different stages. There are different stages. So from 2 to 7 years old, we call it a pre-operational stage. Okay, that's children learn through imaginative play and interact with surrounding. And from 7 to 11 years old, they're at the stage of concrete operational stage, and they started to know and learn about the relationships between mass, space, time, and etc. Okay, but these kind of skills all have to be learned by interacting with their surroundings. And during the pandemic, you know, everyone things like all the measures of anti-COVID regulations, okay, affected the whole learning experience, and many of the skills, especially soft skills, couldn't really be effectively developed. So now here come our first parts of discussion. So what kind of soft skills do you think is really essential, okay, to students, like to children, okay, that we have to really focus on? All right, so how about, yeah.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ritika, and I think as an educator, our primary focus should be working on the fundamental skills or the soft skills for children. Usually through my program, we work on these skills around different academic and non-academic programs. And these skills are really important for our future generations. So they can learn these skills in the real world, and also this can grow with them in their life for the future. Now today I would like to talk about two very important skills, which is communication and organization, and which I feel that every child should enjoy learning and implementing it into their lives as they grow. So communication, when we talk about communication, the first thing that comes into our mind is probably speaking or talking. But communication is not limited to just with words, with talking and speaking. It's how clearly any adult or a child can articulate their thoughts into words. When I say words, it can be speaking or it can be written as well. Now, young children, when we come across young children, we see that they observe a lot, they're very curious, they have their own imagination. They look at their parents at home, they look at their teachers, their peers, their friends, they observe them. They observe them and they try to imitate them. They try to notice their body language. So as an educator, we have to be very, very careful about what we are teaching them or what we are putting it in front of them. So when a child is learning about communication, it is not just limited to their speaking or writing. It is all interconnected. It's also what they read, what they write, and how they are speaking it. Similarly, the other skill is the organization skill. Now, when I say organization, it just doesn't mean that you're organizing things around you. It also means that how you can organize your thoughts, how you are putting your assignments together. And these are the skills which communication is mainly for a group of, I feel that it starts from a very early age. And different age groups, they have different ways of communication. And similarly for the organization, different age groups had different ways of organizing their thoughts, their belongings, their tasks, their assignments. So as we move forward, I'll ask Ms. Richa to take this discussion forward.
Yes, communication is really important. Okay, so how Rich is thinking.
So, as far as I'm concerned, my life's work's been, around creating content for learners of all age groups and all levels, particularly when I'm working with content for children. I make sure that we keep their self-confidence intact. We don't want to create any kind of content that might disrupt that or make them feel small or nervous in any way. And similarly, when we actually work with teachers, when I've done workshops with teachers, we keep the children's self-confidence closest to their heart, where, you know, that's the core of whatever they do. And so for me, self-confidence for children is the biggest social skill that the children can have. And that really comes from a sense of saying that, okay, no matter what life throws at you, no matter what situation you are in, you're just going to have to be, you can deal with it, you're confident, you have the ability to deal with any kind of change. And to deal with change, the two things that are really, really important are resilience and growth mindset. And if I may add, actually this morning I learned a new term called the reinventive mindset, as Vijay spoke about this morning. And which really means that the ability to reinvent yourself when situations change. So for me, building confidence through resilience and the growth mindset are the key things, the key soft skills that children need.
Yeah, the mind of children is really important. We have to really develop it further. And how about Ritu? How do you think about it?
Good afternoon, everyone here, and good afternoon, my co-panelists. Thank you, Mary. According to me, when it comes to the soft skills, they are related to interpersonal skills, cognitive skills, which play a crucial role in the holistic and the overall development of the child. There are several skills which we can talk about. Few skills have been discussed already by my colleagues related to communication, confidence. I would like to discuss related to decision-making power and critical thinking. As I'm into the competitive teaching, I'm dealing with the students from various age groups. And at that time, if a person has got the analytical and critical thinking skills, the problems are everywhere, starting from childhood to the adulthood. But because our discussion is restricted to the children, so we will find there are various aspects of the problem. It could be social, it could be emotional, it could be mental. So there are various problems. So one should have the ability to critically analyze the problem, thinking about the solutions. Another major aspect which I would be discussing is the decision-making power, which requires a lot of guts and which require a lot of confidence also. Suppose all of us have dreams to pursue, but how many of us are able to make it up to that point? That is very important. So when it comes to the decision-making power, nowadays parents have given the liberty to the children to take their own subjects. Nowadays, it's not our time, like when we were forced to enter into engineering or medical, there are only 10 lines which a person can enter, which a child is supposed to opt and enter. Nowadays, the world has been globalized. There are hundreds of lines which are available, and if the children are able to decide for themselves at a particular age, and then they stick to that decision, then according to my opinion, decision making is a very important thing, which if a child can do and learn at an early age and continue to persist on that decision, then that child, when enters into the adulthood, definitely will reach the pinnacle in his or her career. Thank you. Now my colleague Tulasi will take over.
Thank you. Hi, as a childhood education expert and founder of the Mindful Tree Education, it's clear that for me, the most important, essential soft skills for children are social intelligence, emotional, communication, like some of others already told, but especially right now, leadership and entrepreneurial thinking. And then you think, why entrepreneurial thinking? Because entrepreneurs, they need to be courageous, think out of the box, innovative. And this doesn't mean that every child needs to be an entrepreneur, but have to think entrepreneurial. This means wherever they are full focused. They know what they want, they have vision. And at the same time, they take risks, but conscious, intelligent, and well-thinking risks. Another aspect that I really believe that is very important is the leadership. When I speak about leadership, it's not about only lead others, bring innovative thinking or ideas, but also self-leadership. Who cannot control, regulate oneself, how can really properly regulate others? Many, many times when we are in companies, I worked already 17 years in this field and in big corporate. And I got to know some, like to say, successful broken people. People that were like successfully, professionally, but inside, at home, with their own life, their relationship completely broken. And this is not something that I got to see. Probably each one of us got the opportunity to experience such kind of successful broken people. So at home, maybe they have a completely disturbed, broken family, trying to strictly keep all the weakness to themselves. Children are suffering. This is something that I really had to say, because I'm also empowerment coach for children, parents, and teenagers. So it's not something that I'm creating. It's something that we can really see day by day. So by creating this keeping this in mind, this leadership, the self and the out leadership, and being entrepreneur, because right now with these kinds of technologies, it's very important that you keep being innovative, that you keep creating new things, and especially that you are open-minded. And of course, for that, you also need this emotional intelligence. That's why it's mindful through education. The mindfulness is always there. You have to know each other, and have to know yourself, and know others to guide and to empower them. And children right now, they are suffering quite a lot before they were suffering as well. Because always we tend to say, in the past was much better, but it's not true. Already at this time, especially in Switzerland, between 5 children, 1 in already the preschool, it's a child that is depressive. How can you say depressive as preschooler? Yes, because at home, they are not having the support. Or maybe they are having support at home, but they are not having support in schools. Schools are creating also a lot of traumas. That's why it's so important to us as educators, as new leaders, or as change makers, that we really take our responsibilities really, really well and keep thinking not only on ourselves, but on the society in general and their well-being. Thank you.
Yes, okay, so every single soft skills like the experts mentioned are really essential. And now, okay, we all know that the pandemic impacted every single child. Previously, like for some countries or cities, even like 2 to 3 or even 4 years, okay, maybe still now, okay, impacting the students. So, how do you think, okay, the pandemic has impacted actually children? What kind of cases have you seen before or even now?
I don't believe so much about rebuilding soft skills. Most of the children, they have already the soft skills. They just need to be awakened. So how can we support them to awake? Making questions, being present, listen to them, co-create with them. The mindful through education is all about co-creation. If you want really that children, adults, students in general learn, it's very important that we make them participate, their voice matter. And this is one point that we really have to think. And ask the children. Children know a lot. They are full of potential. They are us a little bit more, maybe, creative, with less fears. So if we are amazing. Can you imagine the children when they just come? They are genius, like to say. So basically, is thinking the person that is in front of you, asking questions, give them the opportunity to participate, and of course, co-create. If you want to know more, I'm writing a book about the mindful tree education concept when all this is well detailed written. Thank you.
So how about Ritu? Have you encountered any cases like seriously impacted, like children seriously impacted because of the pandemic?
Thank you, Mary. There has been various kind of impacts which children might have suffered during the time of the pandemic since it got started in March 2020. It was declared as a pandemic by WHO. Now, due to pandemic, the major aspects which were affected were social impacts, emotional impacts, mental health impacts, psychological impacts. There are the impacts on the children, they are multifaceted and multidimensional. And when it comes to categorize them, we will categorize them into 3 categories as preschoolers, school-going children, and adolescents. When it comes to the preschoolers, as per the neurobiologists and the various studies done by the cognitive experts, the age group from 0 to 6 is the time period where 90% development of the brain of the child is done. And during the pandemic times, from newborns till the 6 years of age, these children, the major impacts which they suffered were related to sleeping problems they suffered. At the same time, there were irregularities with respect to the intake of food. There were 3-pronged strategies which were used to get rid of the pandemic, as we all are familiar, that it was social distancing related to hygiene, and the offline or the physical classes, they were converted to online or the hybrid learning. Now, because of this, they were confined in the places. They were missing their peers, their interaction with the peers, that competitive atmosphere, whether it is related to learning, to sports, and all other normal activities which they were doing pre-pandemic, they were restricted, they were confined. And at the same time, the sudden transition from physical to online learning, what we call as the digitalization of the learning, where we all who were teaching physical classes or the offline classes before pandemic, we all shifted to a room, and we all were also forced to teach online by using the laptops. So it was a great adaptability for the children to confine themselves to their houses, to their house environment, where they cannot interact with the freedom with their peers. They had to restrict themselves and they had to study online. I can take my own example. My own child was at that time of around 7 years of age, and he used to cry because because of that screen, excessive exposure to the screen thing, he used to cry like anything. He couldn't understand, and very few classes he used to attend initially. Later on, with some guidance and support, he had attended few classes. So basically, it was a kind of pressure. It was a kind of pressure. They were confined. They lost their freedom. They also lost a kind of free interaction, competition with the peers. They were missing that environment which is responsible for their all-round development. So it also created a kind of depression, anxiety, fear. And here we can also consider the 2 age groups of the 2 categories of the children: those children who were deprived of certain facilities and those children who were having all the facilities at home, but at the same time they were feeling the depression and the fear, the kind of news which used to be flashed on the various channels, as well as the loss of their near and dear ones. So all these circumstances have created a kind of not only the physical, mental, social, few psychological impacts. And when we talk about depression, fear, anxiety, all the irritation, tantrums, temperament changes, all these are the short-term impacts. In long run, there are certain studies which have been done by the Harvard scientists, and they stated there are certain autistic related disorders, there are certain psychological disorders, there are certain disorders which need to be monitored, and the special sessions has to be given to those children. Thank you. My colleague will take over.
Yes, I particularly agree with the space problem because especially in Asian countries, right, like in Hong Kong and like I think probably even in China, like we are living in flats and then like 6, 7, 8 people sharing one flat, how can you, share the space, right? So how about, Richa, how do you think about that, the negative impact?
I tend to agree with what Ritu said, that, overnight all social activities stopped for the kids, there was no school to go to, no friends to talk to, they were running from one Zoom or Google Classroom to another. There was no other activities, after school activities that they would go to, that came to a standstill, even playing in the park and, the usual activities that they would have with the friends and neighborhood kids. All of that kind of stopped all of a sudden. Now what happened then is, and to add to this, you've got the social activity that stopped, and there's this health scare. The kids are hearing about the fear percolates from the parents to the children. So the parents are overprotective of the children. They don't have to wash their hands 1,000 times, not touch anything, not speak to anyone and all of that. That comes in, and then they actually hear about people they know falling sick, some of them even passing on. So all that emotional turmoil that the children were going through took a big beating on their self-confidence. And add to that, now think of, say, the preschooler, the kindergartner, who's maybe a year or maybe close to 2 years got extended as, as a toddler. So they were attending class, but at the same time, the parents were sitting alongside. Their independent skills are not being built. While they're taking classes, the parents or sometimes even the grandparents are spoon feeding them, literally giving them a mid-morning snack, putting it in their mouth while they're working on it. This is the age where the motor skills develops. Little, early childhood education teachers would know they actually literally hold the child's hand to help them write and things like that. None of that happened. And as a result, when these kids came back to school after a year and a half, they were, because they were literally mollycoddled at home because the elders in the house had so much fear that when they came back to school, they were quite, they were just not able to sit in the class for long because they'd never been to school.
It's really difficult to handle, right? Now, because no experience before and all of a sudden back to school.
Now think of the next level of children who are just in primary school. Again, they're sitting at home doing Zoom classes. Parents, as we all know, can be quite competitive, right? And grades become really important. So there've been teachers who've reported, a lot of teachers here would also agree that they've seen parents prompt answers in the Zoom class to the children. Some of the homework or assignments that were turned in were clearly written by the parents. You could make out it's not the child who's written. Now this child does that for a year and a half and comes back post-pandemic to class. And that's when, the whole thing crashes on them because they cannot handle any conflict. Normal things, like normally children learn to cycle, their children, they'll go on monkey bars, they play, they fall, they get hurt. None of that happened for 2 years. So even a slight graze or a little cut would terrify them. Some of them had not even seen blood because that's how protected they'd been. Coming back to class, if the teacher corrected them, they would take it as a criticism. They didn't know how to handle that. They were crying in class. So a lot of teachers have come back saying, we just don't know what to do. If they made a mistake, we can't point out. Then coming on to the slightly older children, whose bodies changed in these 2 years. They grew taller, some of them developed. A lot of them also put on a lot of weight with no activity. Now, they had a loss of confidence and self-esteem because they were afraid that when they would go back, or when they did go back, or they were worried about their friends who they had made. How are they going to actually respond to them? So those are the sort of, self-esteem, self-confidence issues that cropped up and took a real beating during the pandemic.
Yes, thank you very much. And how about Ritika? So have you come across any other cases concerning the negative impacts of the pandemic to the children?
Yes, so unfortunately, the pandemic, when it came in, I could see there was a pattern that the age group of 4 to 7-year-olds, they were the most affected in their communication skills. And I'll give you an example. So one of the parents, they just came to me and said that my child can read. He's a 5-year-old. He can read, but he's not good with spellings. He cannot write spellings properly. He writes incorrect. So my team assessed the child, and what we found out was that the child did not have the clarity of phonics. He lost the clarity, he lost that ability to be clear about phonics in that couple of months or 1 year when the children were at home and they were hit with pandemic. So that was one of the reasons. Of course, when a child doesn't know the phonics properly, they cannot read. They cannot comprehend what they are reading, and further, their thoughts, their imagination, their observation, everything is restricted because there was lack of human interaction at that point. So anything they were reading, they were not able to have that train of thought or clearly comprehend that information and further put it into writing or further journalize it. And also that affected the way they were communicating that information in their words. So that's just one of the examples that was on top of my head. So we informed the parent, okay, you know what, the first step that we have to take is clarify the phonics, and then further, and it's not just about the spellings, it's much more than that. It's also about writing your thoughts. It's also about what the child has to communicate, the emotions, the feelings. It's not just about, it's not confined in, about the spellings only or the academics. And similarly, when I think about the organization, I think more about middle schoolers. So the middle school children, you know, I have a daughter who's in middle school, and they go through a lot of physical changes, social changes, emotional changes. Friends are their priority, so they have a lot of peer pressure. But again, at that point, we as parents, we are expecting them to be more independent in their thoughts, in their tasks. They go through all this, that's a struggle for them. They're going through all this struggle, and on top of that, we are expecting them to be more organized. So in the pandemic, when the middle schoolers, they entered, they had no transition of being organized into their tasks or into their thoughts or into their assignments, or how to manage or balance their work and their activities within school or outside school, because they had no exposure of those activities at home. So, I mean, I want to give an example again. You know, my daughter, she moved from her current school to a new school, and I could see that she was struggling a little bit in the beginning, and I told her, you know what, just organize yourself, just organize your work, just organize everything that you do, plan it, and you will see that everything is going to fall into place. There are new teachers, there are new friends, there's a new setup, but once you plan it, you prioritize your work, you organize it, everything is going to fall into place, because you have less anxiety, you're less overwhelmed with your work, you're less overwhelmed with so much information around you. So I think if, of course, the pandemic affected these couple of skills which all my fellow panelists have mentioned. But again, if we work upon them, I think every child can learn and grow with these skills.
Yeah, after listening to all these negative impacts, on top of that, actually, I want to tell a small case, okay? I've got several students, okay, being impacted because of the mask-wearing policy. I think 3 to 4 of them, okay, because they have been wearing the mask for such a long time, they got used to not to speak with open mouth, okay? So that's why they're like just mumbling the words, okay? So while you're teaching phonics, you get to know the muscle, the down palate, they cannot control it. So then they speak like, let's say the sound, they say like that. So they just make it, they can't pronounce it really well. So these kind of physical problem cause the problem, like everything is interrelated, okay? It impacted on the soft skills, okay? You do not have the biological, things got fixed, and then you can't do the soft skill, you can not get further training. I believe you encounter some cases like that too.
Yes, absolutely. I think, as I mentioned, that after working on few children, I believe reading, writing, and verbal, these are very interconnected. They're very well-connected skills. If a child can read well, they know how to read, they can put their thoughts out into writing, and they're able to speak or articulate themselves much better, because they have a word bank, they have more vocabulary, they have more sentences exposure, and it's not about academics, but they can think out of the box.
So now here we come to the last part of this discussion. So after mentioning so many problems, of course we need to provide suggestions, okay? So what kind of suggestion do you think that you have actually implemented, okay, and it is effective?
So I think there are certain possible ways how we can encourage children, is encourage them to ask questions. Ask them, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Or what are you doing? Ask them questions. This will help, just encourage them, tell them, never stop asking questions. This will help them brainstorm. And also, at the other hand, ask them questions. How was their day? Why do they think this is right, or why do they think this is wrong? How can they do this particular thing differently in their lives? Read a lot with them, read stories with them. If you're reading, I do it with a lot of my students that we are reading a chapter book. I tell them, why don't you add another chapter to it? Why don't you introduce a new character to the story, and let's see how you come up with that. So let them imagine, give them the freedom, give them the voice of confidence, and definitely they will flourish. Also, make classes more discussion-based rather than more instruction-based. So I think kids work better when we give them authority to come on the other side of the room, and they stand up and ask us questions, or they can teach us something. And I think somebody mentioned that earlier in the panel as well. So we have to give them authority for them to imagine and flourish more. Also, there's one very important thing which I feel especially this generation needs to learn. They disagree with a lot of things, it doesn't matter, it's a toddler or it's a 5-year-old or a middle schooler. We have to teach them how to disagree very respectfully. I think this is a very, very important thing which I display in front of my students a lot, that it's fine to disagree or agree with somebody, and especially disagreements, but as long as you're doing it very respectfully, that's what it matters. The other way of communication is encourage them to write letters. We are losing that. I think I might be a little old school. Encourage them to write handwritten letters. Science says that when you write, your mind, the neurons from your mind, they connect to your fingers. So that is really something I always encourage my students. Typing is great, yes. It works for the educators as well as the children, but especially the younger children should know how to write, and also this takes us back to they work on their spellings, and it doesn't autocorrect their work. But again, you know, I don't want to talk. I think we're running out of time.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I will let
how about the
Richa
others?
take over.
Yes, okay. Any more suggestions?
Thank you. So I agree totally with Reetika about, you know, giving the students, you know, helping them celebrate their, talking to them, communicating with them, giving them a choice to speak. Also, how Tulasi just said that, you know, kids really know stuff, so we should encourage them to go about and doing things. So giving them agency, that becomes important. Another thing, to build resilience and to build a growth mindset, celebrate small successes, you know, move from a situation of you know, conflict to collaboration, get them to collaborate with each other. That's something that's really important. I think it would also be setting you know, realistic goals and helping them achieve and move forward with all of them. All these things would actually help build up their confidence.
How about Ritu? Yes, do you have any?
I totally agree with both of my co-panelists. I have just one thing to say, that when it comes to the remedies or to the solution, if there is a problem, there has to be a solution. And when it comes to the scientific solution of such problems, there are two major strategies which have been adopted. One of the strategies is task-oriented strategy, and the another strategy is avoidance strategy. Avoidance strategy is avoiding to getting indulged into such situations, which is particularly more fruitful for the preschoolers or those children who are from newborns to the grade to 6 years of age. And the task-oriented strategies, they are proved to be more successful in case of children who are studying in primary or the secondary school. And the third strategy is the emotional-oriented strategies, in which detaching them and healing their emotions through constructive mindset.
Yeah. Thank you.
You see that time's up. Yes. Give them a round of applause. Great panel. Thank you, guys. Amazing, really great conversation. We're dealing with this today, and the impact of this time on the generations to come is yet to be determined. I want to give an opportunity for anyone with a question. Please step on the mic. We got time for one question. Would anyone like to ask the team? Come on up. It's a female energy with this topic. I think all the moms in the room are going, oh, you know, rolling, like your blood is boiling, right? Please introduce yourself. Mic on? I think the mic's on. Yep.
Hello, can you hear me?
You.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Sumitra, and my question to you is, what about conflict management? With all this that they've been secluded and isolated, many kids have lost or not learned at all the ability to manage conflicts in their relationship with friends. So what is the panel's take on how do we inculcate that after this break? Thank you.
Actually, it's like this. Parents are the role models. Of course, educators, friends also can support. But how you deal with conflicts will be the way that your children will deal with. So, and for sure, in the pandemic, had a lot of conflicts, family conflicts. How you dealt with that? How you respond, how you worked on critique or disagreed. So, it starts all by ourselves. And of course, children learn from that. And then, after that, with their example that they experienced at home, they can also expand this skill. But they already have something at home. Please don't put all responsibility in the educational system. The educational system is like to say, it's a cake. Of course, there are a lot of things that they are bringing, especially knowledge, but the social skills we learn at home. And then from that, educators support it, the friends support as well. And when children learn at home and get outside of the world and get opportunity to disagree. So they also will come back to you because you are their support. You hold their back. And then you can discuss with them how it was and how could it be better. And this co-creation, the discussion will support them and also will uplift them, because parents is something very special. It's two sides learning. You learn from your child learns from you. Want someone to say something else?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think in the school context or as educators to help our students handle conflict, having more collaborative activities, putting them in a situation where there's likely to be conflict, you know, and then helping them resolve, guiding them, and getting them to figure out, rather than isolating them and putting them in silos and saying, you do your work, do the think, pair, share kind of activities, do group work, do a lot of things where there will be some interpersonal conflicts. You have to actually create those situations to help them to help manage those conflicts.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, panelists. Great conversation. Please, I invite you to stand up. We'll take a nice group picture. All the lovely ladies.